It started so innocently that it almost felt comical in hindsight. A quiet evening, a glass of wine, and my inbox lit up with a message from Lisa. We'd met only briefly at a party weeks ago, a passing exchange of smiles and words that left a faint impression. I wasn't expecting her to reach out, much less with an invitation that would pivot my world entirely. "Hey, there's a party this weekend. Thought of you. Interested?" The text was deceptively casual. I replied cautiously, intrigued yet wary. "Sure, sounds fun. What's the vibe?" Lisa was quick, relaxed, open-minded. "Come with an open heart and maybe a bit of courage." Winking face. Courage. My stomach twisted a little, but the thrill of curiosity squashed the hesitation. A few texts later, I had the address and a directive: dress sexy but keep it cool. By the time Saturday night rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves wrapped in a slinky black dress. As my heels clicked against the cobblestones leading to the venue, I repeated Lisa's assurance in my mind. No pressure, just a good time. The house was unassuming, a suburban dream wrapped in twinkling lights. The faint hum of music seeped through the walls, promising a night far removed from the mundane grind of work and reality. Lisa greeted me with a hug and an effortless smile, her energy contagious. She didn't seem surprised to see me, like she already knew I'd take the bait. "You made it." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Let me introduce you to a few people." The atmosphere inside was unlike anything I'd experienced. Elegant yet intimate, the room buzzed with quiet conversations, knowing glances, and the sort of chemistry that tingles on the skin. I scanned the crowd, smiling couples, poised singles, and a rhythm that was distinctly different. This was no ordinary gathering. Lisa leaned in. "So what do you think?" "It's unexpected," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the pulse of the music. "You'll love it," she promised, her grin widening. "Just let yourself go." The room felt charged, and I, an outsider stumbling into their world, was the curiosity of the night. Men I'd never met exchanged glances as if reading some unwritten script. There was a sense of intrigue directed my way, but it wasn't unsettling. It was exhilarating. Except one man. His gaze was steady and unyielding, magnetic in a way that sent an unspoken invitation straight to my core. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until he approached, his presence commanding yet unassuming. "You seem intrigued," he observed, his voice smooth as silk. I smiled nervously. "That obvious? Only to those who are looking." His smile was disarming, his eyes 1,000 stories deep. Something about him made the room blur around us. The air thickened, the music seemed distant, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. But the reality of the situation snapped me back. The unfamiliarity, the intensity, it was overwhelming. I muttered an excuse and darted outside to catch my breath. The cool air hit my face as I leaned against the porch railing. My pulse raced, my chest tightened. What had I walked into? Just as the panic started to creep in, Lisa appeared beside me, a concerned but knowing look on her face. "You okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, still catching my breath. "Yeah, just processing." Lisa's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "Take your time. You're doing great. And remember, you're in control here. Only do what feels right." Her reassurance was a lifeline. I nodded again, steadier this time. "Thanks. I think I just need another minute." Lisa smiled, the kind of smile that said she'd been exactly where I was. "Course. And if you want to leave, that's okay too. But if you stay, you might just have the best night of your life." The air outside was crisp, the distant hum of the party barely audible over the rush of blood in my ears. For a brief moment I thought about leaving. Yet curiosity kept me anchored to the porch. Lisa was right. Something about this place promised an experience I couldn't walk away from, no matter how much my nerves protested. I squared my shoulders and exhaled deeply. Come this far. I wasn't going to back out now. When I stepped back inside, the room felt different, almost as if it had shifted in my brief absence. The atmosphere was warmer, more inviting, yet still laced with that undercurrent of mystery. Conversations hummed around me, laughter punctuating the air as glasses clinked. Lisa spotted me and waved me over to a circle of people she'd been chatting with. "Everyone, this is her," Lisa announced, grinning like a proud matchmaker. "Meet my friend." The group turned their attention to me, smiles all around. Their ease was contagious, pulling me in despite my lingering hesitation. The introductions were quick, names and faces blending together in the glow of candlelight, but one name and one face stood out. Julian. He was the man from earlier, the one with the magnetic gaze and a quiet confidence that seemed to fill the room. Up close, his presence was even more intoxicating. His handshake was firm but warm, his dark eyes meeting mine without flinching. "I'm glad you stayed," he said softly, his voice cutting through the din like a melody meant just for me. I felt my cheeks flush and quickly took a sip of my drink to mask it. "I guess I'm more curious than I thought." His smile deepened, a hint of amusement flickering across his face. "Curiosity is good. It's the first step to discovery." The evening unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Lisa drifted in and out of conversations, a perfect hostess, while I found myself gravitating toward Julian. The initial small talk gave way to deeper questions, the kind that peeled back layers and revealed fragments of who we were beneath the surface. "Why did you come tonight?" he asked suddenly, his tone genuine. I hesitated. How could I explain it? The truth sounded ridiculous even to me. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Lisa invited me and I guess I just wanted something different." He nodded, understanding without judgment. Sometimes stepping into the unknown is the only way to find what you're looking for. I laughed softly, though his words struck a chord. "You sound like you've done this a lot." "Not as much as you might think," he replied, "but enough to know that every night is its own story." Before I could respond, the music shifted and Lisa reappeared, looping an arm through mine. "Come on," she said brightly, pulling me toward the center of the room. "It's time to let loose." The lights dimmed slightly, the space around us narrowing as more people gathered in the main room. The mood grew intimate, the laughter softer, the movements slower. I realized, belatedly, that I was now part of the focal point, standing among a small group while others watched from the periphery. Julian stood nearby, his gaze steady, his presence grounding. First it was playful. Casual touches, shared smiles, and an unspoken rhythm that everyone seemed to understand but me. It was like being swept into a tide, the ebb and flow of the room carrying me along without resistance. But then it changed. The attention shifted toward me in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Every glance felt loaded, every movement charged. Hands brushed my arm, my back, my waist. Friendly gestures, yet unmistakably deliberate. My pulse quickened, the heat in the room suddenly oppressive. Julian noticed. He stepped closer, his voice low and calm. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my breath hitched. "It's just a lot." "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. Without thinking, I took it. Julian led me to a quieter corner, away from the crowd. The air was cooler here, the noise muffled. He poured me a glass of water and handed it over, his expression one of quiet concern. "You're allowed to take a step back," he said, his voice a balm against my frayed nerves. "No one here expects anything from you." I sipped the water, the chill of the glass grounding me. "It's not that I don't want to be here," I admitted. "It's just overwhelming. I didn't realize it would feel like this." Julian leaned against the wall, studying me with those enigmatic eyes. "The first time always does. It's not about fitting in or impressing anyone. It's about finding your own rhythm." His words settled over me like a protective shield. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt like I could breathe. Maybe this didn't have to be a test of my courage. Maybe it could just be an experience. "Thank you," I said, my voice steadier now. I think I needed to hear that. Julian smiled, his hand brushing mine briefly. Come back when you're ready. I lingered in that quiet corner for a while, my heartbeat slowly finding its rhythm again. The water in my hand was cool, grounding me as I tried to make sense of the evening. There was a world behind those walls that I didn't quite understand yet, but part of me wanted to. When I finally rejoined the main room, the energy had shifted again. It wasn't chaotic, far from it. The space buzzed with an intimacy that felt magnetic, drawing me closer despite my apprehension. People were laughing, talking, leaning into one another, their movements fluid and unhurried. The atmosphere was charged but not overwhelming, as if everyone had found their place in the rhythm Julian spoke of. And then there he was, standing near the edge of the room, his presence like a lighthouse guiding me through the storm of my thoughts. Julian's eyes met mine, and a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. It wasn't smug or expectant. It was a question. A silent, "Are you ready?" I wasn't sure of the answer, but I took a step forward anyway. Lisa intercepted me halfway across the room, her face lighting up as she spotted me. "There you are," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with excitement. "I was starting to think you'd gone back outside." I shook my head, managing a small smile. "Just needed a breather." Lisa nodded knowingly, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "It's always a lot the first time, but you're handling it like a pro. Seriously." I laughed softly, the sound surprising even me. "Is that what this looks like?" She grinned. "Definitely. Come on, I want to introduce you to someone." I followed her through the room, weaving between groups of people who seemed entirely at ease. There was a lightness to the way they moved, a confidence that I envied and admired in equal measure. Lisa brought me to a man who stood with two others, his demeanor as relaxed as if he'd been born in this setting. "This is Matt," she said, gesturing toward him. "Matt, meet my friend. She's new." Matt smiled warmly, his handshake firm but casual. "New, huh? Don't worry, we were all new once." I smiled back, grateful for the easy banter. "So, what's the secret to not looking completely out of place?" Matt chuckled, the sound deep and genuine. "There's no secret. Just be yourself. Everyone here is here because they want to be. That's all that matters." Lisa excused herself, leaving me in Matt's company. We talked for a while about everything and nothing at the same time. He was funny, engaging, and had a way of making me forget about my nerves. Before long, the tension in my shoulders eased, and I started to feel like maybe I belonged here after all. As the night wore on, I found myself drifting between conversations and experiences, each one a new chapter in the story I hadn't realized I was writing. Julian reappeared every now and then, always at just the right moment to offer a quiet word or a grounding glance. At one point, he joined me by the bar, his presence a comforting anchor. "You're doing better," he observed, his voice low and calm. I nodded, feeling a flicker of pride. "I think I'm starting to get it." He smiled. "Good. It's not about keeping up with anyone else. It's about finding what feels right for you." For a moment, we stood in comfortable silence, the hum of the party filling the spaces between us. I wanted to ask him more, to understand how he could be so at ease in a world that still felt so foreign to me. But before I could, Lisa returned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Dance with me," she said, tugging at my hand. I hesitated, glancing at Julian. He raised an eyebrow, his expression teasing. "You should." Lisa doesn't take no for an answer. I laughed despite myself, letting Lisa pull me onto the makeshift dance floor. The music was soft and rhythmic, the kind that seeped into your bones and moved you without effort. Lisa swayed beside me, her confidence contagious. I let myself get lost in the music, in the freedom of the moment. For the first time that night, I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't worried about what came next or whether I was doing the right thing. I was just there. And it was enough. As the music faded into the background, I stepped away from the dance floor, my body humming from the rhythm and the energy of the night. Lisa caught my eye and blew me a playful kiss before diving into another conversation. I smiled back, grateful for her encouragement. She'd pulled me into this world, and despite the chaos in my mind earlier, I was starting to see its appeal. But the evening wasn't over yet. Julian found me near the edge of the room, leaning casually against a wall. His presence was steady as ever, and when our eyes met, he gestured subtly for me to join him. I crossed the room, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor. "You looked like you were having fun," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. I admitted, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Lisa has a way of making everything seem effortless. She does, Julian agreed. But tonight's about you, not her. The comment caught me off guard, and I blinked up at him, unsure how to respond. Before I could find the words, he continued. Everyone has their first night here, their first step into something unknown. The key is to take what you want from the experience and leave the rest behind. His words resonated deeply. It was easy to get swept up in the atmosphere, the allure of the unfamiliar. But Julian was right. This night was about me. My choices, my boundaries, my story. "Thank you," I said softly, meaning it more than I could articulate. Julian smiled, a quiet understanding passing between us. He didn't push, didn't ask for more. He simply let me be. The party began to wind down as the night wore on, the crowd thinning and the music softening. I found Lisa in the kitchen, chatting animatedly with a group of people I hadn't met. She turned when she saw me, her eyes lighting up. "There you are. How's it going?" "Better than you expected." I laughed lightly. "Much better." Lisa grinned, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Told you. These parties have a way of surprising you." She wasn't wrong. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions, discoveries, and decisions. It had pushed me to confront parts of myself I hadn't realized were so tightly wound. But now, as I stood there with Lisa, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. "I think I'm going to call it a night," I said, gently untangling myself from her embrace. Lisa pouted dramatically but nodded. "Fair. It's a lot for the first time. But you did great." "Thanks," I said, meaning it. "For everything." She waved me off with a smile, already returning to her conversation as I made my way toward the exit. The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside, a welcome contrast to the warmth inside. I took a deep breath, letting the stillness settle around me. The stars overhead were scattered across the sky, their quiet beauty grounding me after the intensity of the evening. I hadn't expected to learn so much about myself tonight. I hadn't expected the rush of excitement, the pangs of fear, or the quiet moments of clarity that followed. But most of all, I hadn't expected to leave with a sense of gratitude. Not for the party itself, but for what it had taught me. 2 weeks later, as I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, I found myself reflecting on that night. The initial soreness, both physical and emotional, had faded. I'd emerged from the experience with a newfound understanding of my limits and a respect for my boundaries. The party had been a test, not of my bravery, but of my ability to listen to myself. And while I didn't see myself attending another one anytime soon, I didn't regret going. It was a lesson I hadn't known I needed. Lisa texted me later that evening. "Another party next weekend. You in?" I smiled at the message but didn't hesitate to reply. "Thanks, but I'm good for now." "Have fun though." I had my story, and for now that was enough.